After 2 months of living under lockdown, the Scottish First Minister announced the end is in sight.
I can confirm that the Government intends to move from lockdown to phase 1 and thereby lift some restrictions from the 28th of May.
The plan comes more than 2 weeks after the Prime Minister announced a lifting of the lockdown in the UK. But the devolved administrations refused to follow suit.
It may seem fragmented or even confused, but this is the reality of devolution in the UK. The UK government just does not control health policy or education policy in Wales, Northern Ireland, or here in Scotland. What the pandemic has done is laid bare the way different administrations react in very different ways.
The more cautious Scottish approach has been broadly welcomed by residents and contrasts sharply with the speed people in England were urged back to work.
I think she's actually thought about the long-term health statistics much better than Boris has.
I think she's doing OK compared to the rest of the UK, the way she comes across.
The First Minister's plan for lifting Scotland's lockdown is similar to much of what was announced by Boris Johnson, though all school children will stay off for longer in Scotland. The main difference appears to be the way she has communicated with the public.
She has been admirably clear and forthright and candid through a lot of this emergency. And, even some of the people who vote Conservative or Labour in Scotland are prepared to concede that. But in terms of actual policy, there's been very little difference between Scotland and England.
Politics, as usual, has been suspended temporarily at the seat of power. But this unity is unlikely to hold. And while the coronavirus has encouraged the 4 nations of the UK to work together, the next phase could hold more friction.
I think as we move to the next phase, as we exit the lockdown, as we move to responding to the crisis and rebuilding the economy, I think that's when we will start to see more tensions, more difficulties emerging, and perhaps more ideological distinctions in the approaches that they take.
Despite voting no in 2014, Scotland is currently split 50-50 on independence and remains deeply divided. Scotland is set to head to the polls next year in an election that could prove consequential for the future of the UK. Hala Mohieddin, Al Jazeera, Edinburgh.